Hi, I'm Brad DeRoche. Welcome to From the Practice Studio. This is a series available exclusively here through StringsByMail. In today's lesson, we're going to discuss articulation, and specifically we're going to look at how we attack notes in today's lesson. So there's basically two forms of attacking notes or the onset of sound that are different than the standard articulation or plucking of a note. Those two different forms are slurs and glissandi, or slides. Let's take the first one, slurs. Now, most of us do slur exercises on a pretty regular basis. They're just, in the popular jargon, they're called hammer-ons or pull-offs. So here's a simple exercise. You could try just doing something like this, planting first finger, plucking the note, and hammering the second finger on the same string. So your first note is attacked with the right hand, pluck, but the second note is articulated differently through a slur. Oftentimes these notes can sound quite different. You could also work to get them to sound quite similar by softening the attack a little. So you can create some real discrepancies of sound through how you attack a note versus how it's slurred or hammer-on or pull-off. So those little exercises, those are fun. They're good for us to do, but they're a little boring. So I like to apply slurs to scales. And it makes scales a lot more worthwhile. And I think it actually builds our technique a little better than just doing simple digital exercises that we probably will never play in a piece of music. So let's just try one here. Today I'm going to use a simple G major scale in 2 octaves. If you want to play along, here's the fingering. It starts out 2-4, then 1-2-4, 1-3-4, 1-3-4, 2-4, 1-2. Here's the entire scale, ascending and descending. I'm going to articulate each note in the right hand. Okay, so now how do we apply slurs to it? Well, what most people tend to do, at least what I do, and I think it's pretty common for most guitarists, is to pluck the first note of a string, of a group of notes on a string, and then slur the other notes. So if you're ascending, you're going to use hammer-ons. If you're descending, you will use pull-offs for all the other notes after the first. So here's the example. On the first string, the 6th string rather, I'm going to start with my second finger. I'm going to pluck that note in the right hand, and then slur or hammer-on the next note. So articulated, slurred. And we just do the same thing with the notes on the next string. Articulated, slurred. Get the idea? Now, on the first string, we actually have a compound slur. So we have a hammer-on followed by a pull-off. We still just articulate the first note, hammer-on, and then pull-off. So we're getting 2 different directions on that one, a compound slur. Then, once we continue on to the second string, these will be pull-offs. All right, so once again, I'm just articulating the first note and the others are slurred. So here's the entire scale. Okay, so you could try applying that approach to scales. It makes scales a lot more interesting to play for one, and it really does improve our technique and make us more expressive. So when we go to play a line, there's a wide variety of ways that we can articulate it. Here's just a simple example. If I'm just playing on the first couple of strings here, all I did was articulate the first note of each string. But what if I mixed it up a little bit? What if I articulated the first and the second note of the string? That sounds quite different than that. Or what if I articulate some of the other notes on the first string? Sorry, that was a bad sound. Sounds quite different to have that articulation versus that one. So really what we're trying to do is to get comfortable with the idea of slurring within a scale, so that when we go to play a melodic line on the instrument, we have a wide variety of ways we can articulate or express that scale and that line in music. All right, then let's take a look at glissandi or slides, how we can slide into a note to make it sound different, the attack sound, than just a slur. And the best way, I think, to do this is to play a pattern or perhaps a scale on one string so that you get a chance to actually move ascending and descending. Here's a pattern that we could use. We could just play a major scale on the first string, for instance. I'll just show you the frets here. This is an F major scale. First fret, third fret, fifth fret, then 6th, 8th, 10th, and lastly 12 and 13. Now the fingerings I'm going to use are different than what I just showed you. I'm just showing you the frets to begin with, okay? So 1, 3, 5, 6, 8, 10, 12, 13. All right, so one little pattern that you could do if you want to use it as in a major scale pattern would be slide the first to the second note. All right. So what I'm doing there is I'm getting used to the glissandi or the slide in the left hand. Now when you do these, there's a few different ways that people approach glissandi. Some people really want to hear all the notes in between. It gets a little gaudy, I think, when you're doing a long slide, when you hear all of the notes in between. It is used in some styles of music, but I think perhaps a little better way when you're doing a longer slide is to kind of hear the first note and then the arrival. Instead of, okay, you can play around with that idea a little bit. But for these ones, what I'm doing is I'm just kind of lightening up the pressure for those longer slides. And so when I get to the last note, I push down again. So I have a little bit of volume on the first and the last note, but not so much in between. Okay, so you can try that approach for longer glissandi or longer slides. But let's just try this little exercise together. So I'm first fret, slide to third, and then articulate the next note. Okay, then you can go backward or descending, and you can try some of these patterns out here. If I did the same fingering, I would end up using 1 and 2 pretty much exclusively, 1, 2, 3. So let's try a little slide here with the fourth finger. And so doing this one is really good practice because we don't have as much control with the fourth finger typically. So shanked one note in the middle. Need to go back to the practice room and work on that one. All right, hopefully you get the idea though, where you are doing a slide on one string or glissandi, and so that really changes the articulation. So if we were to kind of go back to some of these little scale patterns I was doing before. You really can come up with a huge variety of sounds just with a simple scale or melodic pattern. And that's the point here. That's what we're trying to learn how to do in the practice studio, is to get good with articulation so that when we go to play a piece of music, our technique is there and we can express the idea we have in our head. So looking back at the lesson today, what we are focusing on is the attack sound, the onset of sound of the different notes, and we can alter it by either plucking the note normally and having a standard attack, or we can also slide into a note or use a slur or a pull off, hammer on or pull off, to sound the note. And it gives us a wide variety of articulations of every individual note. Hopefully this was helpful for you. Maybe you got a few ideas that you can apply to your own practice. By all means, try out different patterns. Don't just stick with the ones I gave you here. That's just an example to get you started, but find creative ways to make your practice more enjoyable and more effective. Hopefully you can join us again for the next one, and keep practicing, and we'll see you soon. Cheers.